Are you ready for love? Hi, I'm Marcus Holmes, the facilitator of the Love and Stuff community, and we're ready for you to join us on the next episode of the dating game. Forget all of the social distancing. Let's get up close and personal online. And who knows, you might make a heart connection that will lead you to a private Zoom room date. Inbox me now at Marcus R. Holmes or at Love and Stuff for your opportunity to connect closer while we are so far apart. Stay safe and be well. And good evening. I am Marcus Holmes, and I'm excited to be here with you for another edition of Love and Stuff. I hope that you will click share and tag a few of your friends, 5 of your closest Facebook friends, 5 of your more popular Facebook friends to join us in the discussion. We are also live on YouTube events and Twitch TV, as well as the Marcus R. Holmes page and the Love and Stuff page. And I've invited a few guests to join me. I believe they will be in shortly. I'm hoping that this connection is stable. It looks like I'm having some connection challenges. But we just wanted, as a follow-up, to all of you who did such a wonderful civic duty, performed your duty, and standing up and letting your voices be counted. I know Facebook and other platforms have been filled with some of the wonderful, some would say wonderful, and interesting commentary as it relates to the results. I say that this was a dramatic close to the 4th season of a reality show. And this reality show has ended. We have decided to go in another direction. And we'll talk a little bit about that because there are still legal battles that are happening, and we can probably expect for at least the next 70 days, there will be legal battles. So click share and tag some folks to join us in the discussion. Terry Fairley has joined us. Thank you so much. Bilal Muhammad, thank you, brother, for joining us. I see a couple of folks that are on the Love and Stuff platform. If you will just drop in the comments where you are and what the temperature is like where you are. We've had a wonderfully warm day here on the northwest side of Detroit. And I think it's still in the 60s, which is warm for us in November. I know there are places around the world that 60 is nothing, but for us, it's a gift. And so we're excited to be here in this time. Kalandra Boyd Hobson has joined us as well. All of you that are joining, I hope that you will click share and tag a few folks to join us in the discussion. We want to hear from you. How are you feeling after this election? Well, one of our guests has arrived. Enrico White, who is a pastor in Charlotte, North Carolina, as well as a realtor there, has consented of shortest notice so that he can represent the fair state of North Carolina. I want to talk to him about what the sentiment is like there. After just recently hearing some news, it looks like maybe Trump has won that state. But I, want to get some comments from him on that, and just in general, what the sentiment is like there in his area. Eric Powers joined us as well. Thank you all for joining. I hope you will click share and tag some folks to join us in the discussion. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Enrico White, Pastor Enrico White. Thank you, sir, for joining us. I appreciate you.
Always good to see you, my friend.
Always good to be seen and great seeing you.
Thank you.
And so listen, you are, well, first, Saturday comes and they announce that Joe Biden has accumulated enough electoral votes to become president-elect. What were your initial thoughts when you saw that?
Well, I was literally driving when a text came in from one of our church members that said Biden wins. I literally pulled off onto the side of Interstate 85 to get on CNN.com just to see, to be sure. And although I didn't, I wanted to get out of the car and just do a dance right then and there.
Yeah. So I take it very excited, very pleased with the results. And tell me now, today, they're saying that North Carolina has been carried by Mr. Trump. What is the sentiment like there now hearing that news? Does that matter as much now, or how do you feel about that?
While he did indeed won the state of North Carolina, it definitely was not because of Charlotte, nor Mecklenburg County, which is the county in which we're in.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's absolute disappointment in this part of North Carolina, but there are still those supporters that even had a rally in support of Trump on this past Sunday, riding around the city on Interstate 485, which is a loop around the city. A couple of dozen cars, I understand, were riding around, but overwhelmingly in Charlotte, we are absolutely pleased with the results.
Mm-hmm. And what was service like on Sunday? Did you have a election sermon title? What was service like on Sunday?
Well, we're still doing everything virtually.
Okay.
So we did indeed give a message to let folks know God really is still he's still in charge, and that God is up to something. For when he said in Jeremiah 29:11, I know the thoughts that I have toward you, thoughts of good, not of evil, to give you an expected end, and just share that God's plans always fulfill his purpose, always moves us into progress, and always ends with praise. He had to take us through some things. We've been through some things within the last 4 years. But as Paul said in Romans, all things work together for the good. And we've learned some things over the course of these last 4 years. And if God, who is up to something, he got our attention over the last 4 years.
I know that's right, and I am a person, a man of faith, and I certainly believe in prayer. But I think I've prayed more, I think, in these last 4 years than I think I had prayed in the 4 years before. So I think God really did want our attention, and he certainly did not only garner our attention, he got it, right?
He got it.
He got our attention. And so what are some of the things that you are hopeful to see happen? Are you concerned about some of these legal battles that are being raised in these next 70 days? Are you concerned about that?
I personally think that each one of those is nothing but a distraction. He has ruled the last 4 years, and I use the word intentionally, rule, although we govern in this country. He really wanted to be an authoritarian type of leader and a dictator who ruled. And even right now, he's trying to rule the way things go within his Republican Party. But I'm not concerned about the outcome as far as it affecting the election. I do have some concern about his intent of distracting and just rallying up his troops for whatever their next is. But I don't think it's going to overturn the election. It's all a part of the distraction.
Yeah, I want to ask about that a little bit because there are Trump supporters definitely in North Carolina. Are you concerned about some of the radical or extremist type supporters that might do more than just kick up dirt? They might do some damage or harm. Are you concerned about that?
Well, I think we need to, as the Bible says, be sober, be vigilant, be aware. The enemy is out there. I'm not going to walk around and fearful, just looking for something to happen, waiting to see. But I would not be surprised at all if those type of things take place.
And so you said in the Charlotte area, everybody's pleased. So I'm just trying to get a sense of if, from your church members, colleagues, friends, it would be a celebratory probably atmosphere. And then getting the news today might be a little damper on that atmosphere. No? Yes?
Well, even when the announcement was made on Saturday, we all celebrated. Even then, knowing that at Saturday, Trump was up in North Carolina by 75,000 votes. So we knew Biden wasn't going to overcome 75,000 vote, a 75,000 vote deficit at that time. So we're just celebrating at the fact that, hey, we've got other states, the Electoral College, that made this thing happen in spite of.
And so, some 70 million people um, or thereabout supported Trump, voted for him. So we're clearly maybe not the United States of America. Maybe we're the divided states of America right now. What do you say about us coming together and moving forward? How difficult do you think that will be for us to come together? Because there was a lot of pretty nasty rhetoric and pretty nasty actions that happened during this election cycle. So how do we come together?
Well, during the last 4 years of the Trump presidency, all we heard were divisive words and rhetoric, things that just uh, permeated, and the propaganda that continued to keep us a divided states of America. He divided us racially, he divided us economically, he divided us in any way that benefited him.
Mhm.
And he has rallied up his troops that I don't care what he does or says. There are those who are going to just repeat what he says without any factual information. My
Mhm.
concern is that's not going to change overnight. And we're just going to have to Biden, who's promoting healing, is going to have to stay the course. Just stay the course. Just stay the course, because he's going to find opposition along the way.
All right. We're talking with Pastor Enrico White from Charlotte, North Carolina, who is also a realtor. I'm going to put that plug in there. I'm just going to go to the comments. Rona Albellanoza has joined us. Thank you so much, Corey Mildred King, Raymond Govin, Carrie Das, Lisa Ellison, Elisa J. Love Lewis. Thank you all for joining. I hope you will click share.
Those
Tag
are some
five.
wonderful members of Weeping Willow you just called out as well. And Raymond is a wonderful member of Caldwell Temple in the Bronx, New York.
Wow, wonderful. Thank you all for joining us. I hope you will click share and tag some more of your friends to join us in the discussion with this distinguished gentleman sharing some information. So I want to know, what about your women parishioners, sisters, nieces, other folks in your family? How are they feeling about the first African American, African Indian American, African Asian American, however they want to say it, woman in the second highest office of the land? What has the sentiment been? What have people, especially women, had to say about it?
One, I think everyone, nearly everyone, is just super, super excited to have Kamala Harris to serve as who presently is the vice president elect for the United States of America. You're talking about glass ceilings being shattered. I mean, it is absolutely amazing. And to her AKA sisters, it is a serious matter. We are so excited for Kamala Harris and for what it does. Just for, not just for women, or not just Black women, or not just Asian American, but for humankind, period. It's exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very exciting. Corey Reed has joined us. Gerald Shiner, Dr. Shiner, thank you, sir, for coming through. Love and Stuff. We're talking with Enrico White, pastor of Weeping Willow AME Zion Church in Charlotte, North Carolina. You're in Charlotte, right?
In Charlotte.
Okay, in Charlotte, North Carolina, who is also a realtor. I'm going to keep talking that up. And so, because I'm wondering, are you hopeful because of this change, for a change in economy? I mean, I think housing was doing fairly decent, though. I think people have been still buying and selling and moving. But what's your outlook as a businessman? Are you more confident and comfortable about a turnaround, or what are your thoughts?
Well, since you mentioned the real estate part, in Charlotte, by and large in the country, but especially in the Charlotte region, where there's a shortage of housing, there are nearly 100 people per day moving into Charlotte. And
Wow.
There's not enough housing to accommodate the need or the demand. And as a result, Charlotte, the prices are escalating rapidly. So it didn't affect the real estate market much. Even when we had to go through COVID, we had to kind of change how we showed houses, but it did not stop at all the market. But just really excited that a Biden presidency first wants to attack this COVID virus to get it under control. And while it may cause some temporary pain, the long-term gain economically is going to be worth it all. We'll see the economy really roar back on a steady path once we get that thing under control.
Wonderful. I'm going to have Darren Williams and Valerie Colbert Osamwedi join us. Both of you check your signals. It's showing me low signals, but thank you for joining us. Both of you, I appreciate your great minds joining us with Pastor Enrico White. Valerie, I'm going to double back to you because I asked Pastor White what was the sentiment among the women parishioners at his church and in his area there in Charlotte. I want to ask you as a woman, having the first African.
Barely hear you.
You can barely hear me? Okay.
I'm trying to get my speaker up.
Okay. All right. I'm going to give you a chance to do that. I'll double back to you. I'm going to go to Darren Williams all the way over there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, another state that Trump took.
Easily.
But also in the pastorate, Pastor Darren Williams, thank you for joining us today, sir. I appreciate you so much.
Bless you. Good to be here. I'm on the runs, but I'm here.
Okay. And what's the weather like out there? I just wanted for our viewers to know.
We are in the 50s now. It was 70s earlier, but we're in the 50s and going lower.
Okay. All right. We had 70s today. I think we're around in the 60s. It feels good. I love it. So let me ask you this. I was just talking to Pastor Enrico White from North Carolina. And of course, we saw today where Trump has taken North Carolina or has been projected as the winner in North Carolina. How did you feel when Trump was projected the winner? I think I asked you before in Oklahoma, that was pretty expected, right? You expected that he would carry it.
Easily, definitely, yes.
How did you feel Saturday when we got the results that Joe Biden was the projected winner? How did you feel then?
I'll tell you what's my feeling was stronger for the fact that it was African American communities and African American votes that actually turned the tide and made the difference. And I say that because what that indicated to me, which has always been true, is that as a people, we actually have the power to determine elections in the United States of America. That was the strongest feeling I had about things. But I am glad that it was for Joseph Biden.
Yeah, I'm going to come back to that point because I wonder if we have that power. Is it just that we didn't know we had that power? Because I don't think it's new power, but I'm going to come back to that.
Okay.
I want to go back to you, Val. Come Saturday, and we get the first African American, African Indian, African Asian, whatever they want to say. She got some of us in her. Woman, second highest office in the land. How did that speak to you as a woman? How did you feel Saturday?
I was jubilant. I didn't realize really how jubilant I was going to be until I was in the moment. I jumped up. I did a little jig, ran down the hall to tell my sister who has a morning call she was on to tell her, we got a vice president elect. Oh, I said, oh no, and a president elect and a vice president elect. We chosen Kamala Harris, and I was just very pleased, happy. I have a daughter that's so interested in politics, so interested in constitutional law and things like that, that it was good to see that she could see that, it's not too far in the future that maybe she can be standing there. I really have that much confidence in her. But it was just, I was more excited than I thought I would be. So I was very happy, very pleased.
Yeah. And, Pastor White was talking earlier, talk about breaking glass ceilings, really, so that, people just like your daughter, who is beautiful and brilliant, could, soon one day be in that kind of spot. That must make you feel great to know that opportunity awaits her, that kind of opportunity.
Yes. And I think it really, even she said this in her speech, and it speaks really volumes to Biden to have selected her to be in that second position, because he's really positioning her to be the front runner for the president of the United States. I don't anticipate Biden running a second term, frankly. I think his age is going to limit him. I think he's going to come to that realization. He's definitely positioned her to be the standard bearer for this party, for at least the Democratic Party, and ultimately be a contender for the president of the United States.
Wow. I think that was an excellent choice as well. I know there are some folks that went along to get along because they wanted Bernie Sanders, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I think he did make a good choice. Either of you brothers want to comment on that choice of Kamala Harris, Vice President-elect, forgive me?
Yeah. Personally, I don't think he could have made a better choice. That she as a candidate for the presidency, as they were both candidates for the same position, she showed him that she could hold her own and stand up with anyone. And for him to realize that, to see that after winning the nomination, to say, hey, I need someone like that on my team, that speaks volumes about him.
I think she was his best political choice. In terms of the ability for what America is and where America is to win an election, she was the best political choice. She is not who I think, she's not who I thought of and would have held out for, but the state of Georgia holds up for me who I thought was the strongest, and Stacey Abrams for me was who I suggested that he or thought he should have gone with.
She didn't want it.
She
didn't want it.
I know all of that.
If I had to pick
inside of my mind,
that would have been my first choice too. Stacey Abrams.
Sure. And there are very particular reasons why I talk about it as a political choice, because I'm different than what a lot of people say. And you all have heard the arguments. I think Amy Goodman was the first news personality, Democracy Now! TV. And you, Marcus Holmes, are the first that I've heard publicly talk about her or characterize her as African American, which she, to my mind, technically is not that, which is why she's a political choice to me.
Okay. And when you say technically, you're saying technically because you know to 100% degree that she doesn't have any African American in her blood. Is that what you're telling me, Darren?
What I know is that her mother is from India and her father's from Jamaica.
Okay. And do you know that him being from Jamaica, if there's any part of his ancestry that is Afro anything, do you know that or not?
Well, he has to be if he's Jamaican, yes.
Okay. And so you characterizing black as what? You defined it maybe something differently than what?
I didn't talk about it black. I didn't use black at all. But when
African American.
When I talk about African American, I'm talking about the literal experience of having the American slavery institution as part of the way of life in your heritage. That she does not have. She does not have that. And I don't quibble. Don't get me wrong. Now, I'm not quibbling with any of that because I love the sister. I accept the sister, and especially the way that she claimed black women and black folks on Saturday night. I'm not quibbling with any of that. But I mean, if there's for the sake of argument, if there's an argument, if there's a discussion to be had, and I'm not trying to prove any point. Understand that. This me inside my head.
Okay. And sharing it with our Facebook community. That's why I just wanted to clarify, but I appreciate that.
Okay.
Anybody want to follow up on that? Okay, cool. So I want to move on then and ask you about these legal challenges. One of the legal challenges, sets of legal challenges are in Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, Trump believes he's got to win, and that I guess observers can be more close to any kind of vote counting, and that any votes that might be declared unconstitutional by the deadlines had to be segregated, right? So those were two of the wins that I think that Trump is touting. Are any of you concerned about these legal challenges, the veracity of any of them that have been raised or ones to come over these next 70 days or so?
I stated earlier that all of this, all of the challenges, all of that rhetoric with the challenges are nothing but distractions. There is absolutely no evidence being shown for any illegalities with the voting and the voting process that's taking place.
Okay.
I agree. He's filed 5 lawsuits and won none. And although he may have have won the direction to hold those particular ballots, they haven't been counted. There's still a win from those that have been counted. And so those set aside is not even enough for him to overcome the win. So, okay, set them aside, add them count. It's probably going to only increase Biden's count, lead. So there's been zero to no evidence of fraud. And it's really just disheartening, because all it does is just continues to undermine the one institution, the one thing that we all pretty much agreed upon is the voting system, while not perfect, certainly is one, and we tout to the world as one that works. And so that's the disappointment. The disappointment is of course the desperation and the blind loyalty of his party that continues to tout that there's some kind of fraud without any kind of evidence, and then to bring that on the Senate floor and to put that kind of rhetoric in the record, the historic record for all times, it's just unconscionable to me.
Yeah, I agree. I'll say it this way too, that the president is a terrible poker player, because way before the election, he started talking about, these, nefarious charges of voter fraud, all of those kinds of things. However, he was very intentional, because he was signaling when he did that. Okay. And so we understand the strategy, or at least it's clear that there was a strategy that he had in mind with that. And again, agreeing with my brother and sister here, that the courts and even people from his own party are already suggesting that there is no evidentiary nature in any of the claims that are being made. And the question would be asked, especially in terms of Pennsylvania, if you're talking about monitors not being present or close enough in the state, are you talking about those other counties where you won the election too? Or are you just talking about Philadelphia? And that's highly suspect if that's what you're doing there. And so my greatest concern with that, because I understand that the Attorney General has authorized, some investigations into some of these claims. My only concern with that is, and I let me just say this and move on, that that really undermines, and my sister just said that it really undermines, and I don't hold the position of the type that America has built for itself, but what the president is doing and his claims really undermines all of those ideas that America imports about herself around the world and to herself. That's how I see that.
I want to pivot a little bit and ask you about next steps. Where do we go from here? 70 million people didn't think like we think. or to some degree, maybe voted for Trump. And so we're not the United States, more like the divided states, right, of America. What would you say are next steps that you hope that this new administration will do? And then after that, what are the next steps? We heard a lot about in this election cycle about an agenda, a Black agenda for Black people. What do you think should be done as to crafting that agenda and strategies for Black people? So first, again, what do you think the administration next step of bringing healing to this nation to the degree they might be able to? And then what about a Black agenda? Because that was, before people, now we know we got this power, which I think we've had for some time, and we forgot maybe we had this power. But what about crafting an agenda, and what does that look like?
Let me address that part that says that we may have forgot we had that power. One, there's a whole new generation of voters that never knew or has never really embraced history to know the power that we've had and how we've attained it. So now they're really seeing how that power really is in their hands and in their vote, and really seeing it like for real. And I want to encourage everybody in Georgia, everybody's got any connections in Georgia, vote. With the agenda, one, that's got to be the healing. We got to show care and concern for all people, for all, whether you won, whether you lost. We got to show concern for all. But you also, when you've been helped by some, don't forget those who've helped you. So this administration, this new incoming administration, don't forget those who helped you get there. We've got some concerns. We've got some needs. Don't forget us.
Yeah. And I do want to follow up, and when we come from our other panelists, to talk to you a little bit about that, because of course you're all people of faith, but two of you are pastors, and so I know you would want us to forgive and move forward. But we've seen such nasty rhetoric and such nasty interchanges. It's difficult to just say, okay, now let's just come together, kumbaya, when we know that people are saying, now I'm racist and I've let it rear its head. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. How do we work to come together? But I want to give Val and Darren, I saw Val smile. I didn't want to say Val's a preacher, but she got that preacher under. That's why I said that. Two are pastors and one, I'm just going to let that be where that is. But Val and Darren, what would you say about what's next for the administration, you hope? And what about this Black agenda?
Well, I would say the Congressional Black Caucus has a Black agenda. It unveiled its back in January. It's called the Jobs and Justice Act of 2020. It is a very comprehensive bill that's been passed and is sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. And it is a robust funding. It talks about COVID funding. It talks about infrastructure and investment. It talks about dollars and money specifically targeted for Black men ages, I think 18 to 45 or something to that effect. It talks about expanding HBCU credits and STEM. It is extremely comprehensive. And one of the down things about the Congressional Black Caucus is they don't toot their own horns. If you're not following politics or certain people, you wouldn't even know that this exists. And so when I hear a brother like Ice Cube say, there's nothing out there, yes, there is. And it's very comprehensive, and it has been passed by the Congress. So so we do have a plan that is in place and is ready to be voted upon, which is so important that we get those Georgia seats. We gotta get those Georgia seats. Now for me, I believe in love and healing, but I do not think that is the how we should conduct ourselves politically. I think that we can maybe raise the olive branch, but for sure we already have the machinations from Mitch McConnell already in place. He's already telling Joe Biden, oh, you're going to have to come through me to get your cabinet picks. So, I mean, to me, if we get those Georgia seats, we need to strike while the iron is hot. We need to let them know, we wield the power, and we have to get these agendas, these long-term agendas in place. They have to get to President Biden's desk in order to be made into law, in order for anything to move forward. And if we are still in that grid that Obama, had, we don't stand a chance unless it's through executive orders and those things. And that's not really what you want. So I think, you try to play that role initially, you see, but they are already showing you what they are going to do and who they are. So that's just on the political end. I'm just talking about politics on the Hill. I think there's a whole in which you can perhaps mend the country outside of politics, but I think in terms of the political way in which we want to get this agenda through that will, transform some of the things that we need, I don't think you're going to be able to play nice.
Okay.
Let me say, my machine is telling me I got 20 minutes before it dies, because I already got the red X light that's on there. So I'm gonna say what I say quick, and then I'm gonna get to where I can log back in, sign back in quick, immediately. I think the answer to your first question is in the second question, and the answer to the third question is the answer to it all. What does the administration owe? How can the administration, or what's its step? The president-elect said it. The African-American community, you have always had my back. Now I've got yours. But the second answer, what is our agenda? First thing is, African-American community is not at a place of agenda yet. We are not there. We are not there. What is our next step? Organizing ourselves is our next first step. We've got to bring ourselves together first, because you can't set an agenda if you don't have yourself together. And if we just follow the lead of the most successful protest movement in the history of the world, the civil rights movement, it was organizing first. Then you strategize and set agendas after.
I think we lost him, and that was some good stuff he was putting out. Hopefully we can get him right back. That's Darren Williams. I want to come back to you, Val, on that. I was going to ask, Ice Cube, should somebody have pulled his coattail then? If the Democratic caucus, Black caucus, already had a plan, someone should have pulled his knucklehead, excuse me.
Well, they did. You know who did? Roland Martin had him on his show.
Mm-hmm.
And he put both of the plans side by side. And he walked them through it. He did. I mean, he did not know that it existed. So, but part of the problem is in the Congressional Black Caucus needs to be out there saying, hey, America, we have this kind of act that we have passed in January 2020. And this is what is a part of that package. Billions of dollars have been set aside for that. Now, if you don't follow politics, you wouldn't know that.
And so, Val, let me jump in and ask a quick question on that. They have a plan that they built. Who did they build it with if we don't know about it? How did they engage the commonwealth of African Americans to understand what we would need? How would you do that without us knowing about it if we weren't engaged?
Well, they engaged grassroots people. They engaged folks for working with criminal justice reforms. They engaged people, doctors, and with respect to COVID, they engaged Black economists. They engaged Black educators. All of those things were they engaged in as congressional representatives. People in their community, they knew what folks were asking for. It's the same thing with the AOC and the what do they call themselves? The Squad. When they came up with the new Green Deal or whatever, they went to their constituents. And so I mean, so this bill is very robust. People should take a look at it. Go online and take a look at what some of the things that they have to better and uplift the Black community, and things that are really targeted with, especially to our young Black men and to women. They have money targeted to both community, both genders, for lack of a better word. So so you do have something that's comprehensive that is already been passed by the Congress, that is waiting to be voted upon in the Senate or changed, or you can, obviously there may be some debate, but we don't get debate much anymore in the Senate. But it is a very comprehensive bill. And so yes, they took these two bills. I don't know if you've ever seen, if you had the opportunity to see that interchange between the two of them, and he took the bill of the Congressional Black Caucus, and he took Trump's plan, and it showed one's vague, one's full of vagaries and promises with no dollars attached to them. One is comprehensive and thoughtful with money attached to it, appropriations to get the job done. So I think if you he came to appreciate that there was something in place. Now, it may not be everything he wants, but there is something in place.
Yeah, I think it is important for people to know, one, that exists, and two, review it to be able to see if it is, what we hope would be in place. Do you think there's any value in us rallying, or people rallying toward, we've heard it, flipping Georgia or getting in, Democratic folks in those seats between now and January? What should we do in the sense of organize or helping? What should we do?
Money.
Any political candidate needs money. Send them money.
Money from our states, for sure. I mean, we're not there to vote, but we certainly can certainly lend our money, and some people can go down there and knock on some doors. I mean, if you're young college students, or you're young students, or people who unfortunately may not be employed right now, take some time. If you got relatives down there, and give yourself to the grassroots efforts. Get on, these phone banks are across the country, so you can certainly do phone banking for Georgia in Michigan. So I mean, but the main thing is, really, you talk about some money that's going to be poured into these states, to these races. Obviously the Democratic Party is going to pour some money in, but we need to be investing in these races as well. Every bit counts.
Every bit counts.
Every bit counts. All right. So what about keeping people engaged? Now it seems that people are more engaged. We saw this when Obama was elected. How do we keep people engaged in this process? Is there something that we can do to formalize engagement, to keep people engaged in the process? Everybody doesn't have that savvy or interest. It's unfortunate that they don't. But how do we engage, get people to maintain sustainability of this engagement?
Well, one, just being able to see the results. Let me back up a little bit to where Valerie was talking about what the Congressional Black Caucus done. Alma Adams, who is our representative for the North Carolina 12th Congressional District. She absolutely keeps us informed on all of that and those things that are going on in this particular area. But while she, being a part of the caucus, shares that with her constituents, there's got to be a much better PR to get that thing out to the masses. When you talked about the squad got national attention on their Green New Deal. Where's the national attention when it comes to something that deals with us?
Right,
so,
right.
Yeah, we got to make that PR piece there. And then, as we've shown what can happen on the national scene, we've got to show that these races in between are just as important. And what happens in your local municipalities is that much more important. The county level here in North Carolina, that's where all the dollars and cents and movement take place for those things that affect us locally, housing and transit and
Right.
all that type of. So you want to see some changes in your local community, just like you saw that change with your vote on the presidential election. Get those city council representatives, get those county representatives, those state, make those things happen. And when they see change, I think we'll see even more getting involved with change.
I think I absolutely laud that, because that's so true. And it's interesting because when you talk about, we should be already gearing up for 2022, the midterms. 2/3 of those seats are up in the state. We need to be gearing up to gather right now, looking where we can put our dollars and our money and our votes and get some seats, vulnerable candidates. But we need to be gearing up for that now. I mean, that's just the cycle of politics. One ends, you take a breath and you begin for the next cycle. But one of the things that I heard, which was very interesting to me, and I said, this is really true. And it harkens back to the pastor who's kind of gone off right now. Hope for him to come back. It goes back to the civil rights movement. And, when you had SNCC and they went into those rural communities, were giving classes, civic classes, letting people know the importance of their vote, how the system works, all of those kinds of things. They actually engage people to know and to understand the process. We definitely don't have that anymore. I mean, I grew up in an era where, of course, you were taught all of that in school,
Right,
but
right.
we should be, as Black communities, Latin communities, Latino communities, educating our people in whatever way. I think there's this great rapper who did a really great, I can't think of the name. He has blonde and yellow hair, but he did an excellent rap explaining what happened how we lost the seats in 2010 and how we didn't come out and give Obama, we didn't come out and vote in the midterm, so he lost the Senate, and how he couldn't get things done. And he did a great job, a fantastic rap of explaining the process. And we have to go back to some of those grassroots efforts to educate our people, our young people, our old people, the importance of the vote, how things work, and show them that that what people are listening, their vote counts. Do you look? If you can't look at these razor thin people losing, 18,000 votes, that's nothing. All of that. It was one point when Trump and Biden were separated by 400 votes in Nevada. That's all. So if you can kind of engage people and again, if they can see the results, the fruits of their labor, and I think you will see that more so on the local level, people will be engaged. People will be engaged. But we've got to get back to that kind of basic education, those basic on the ground, boots on the ground kind of engagement with our people as it relates to the electric and how to maximize their votes and power.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I was going to say before you started speaking, I had already determined in my mind I was deputizing you and Enrico to be our correspondents on things politics, because I think people do need to understand and be engaged. People, everybody I've talked to is so fired up and they're so excited that their votes have made a difference and they're so proud. The pride that I run across that people have, I don't want them to lose that. And some of it is just because people don't know. You know, people don't have a place where they can go and just learn information about the process and learn how to get engaged and learn how to stay engaged and learn, you know, some people didn't know we need to be sending our money to Georgia to help them flip the state. People just thought, well, I'm just going to pray. That's the, you know, I don't know. But there are things that we all could do. People didn't know there's a plan already. People don't even know about the Congressional Black Caucus and who are they and how, you know, how do we engage with them? How do we make sure their PR is better, their marketing is better? How do we tap into that to make some difference? And so I said, in my mind, I said, yep, I'm going to deputize these two to come back and talk more to the folks in Love and Stuff and more to people who are really right now fired up. Because my fear, if I can use that word, is that we'll be in 2 years, we will have lost this momentum and we'll lose seats because people will say, well, I did my part. What is Joe doing? What is, how much, you know, did they pick the right people? Or, you know, I did my part, but our part continues. As you say, you take a breath and you get into the next leg of advocacy and participation. So we'll keep having these ongoing discussions because there's just a lot that I think people can learn, as you said, Valerie, young or older, younger seasoned. I don't want to say old. People might take that the wrong way. But wherever you are along life's journey, we can all learn more and we can all do more with what we've learned. So I think that is important to keep people engaged because everybody's just so fired up. I don't know what your experience has been, but I'm even going into stores and I'm trying to social distance and, you know, it's just you may relate to this. There's something about our people. When you're in the presence of our people, we acknowledge each other in a certain way. And the pride with which people do that now, it's almost get you giddy because it takes you back to a time when we were brother and sister, though I was very young during that time for the record. But everybody was brother and sister, my beautiful Black brother and sister. Some of that is coming back and you know, how people are engaging each other. And I don't want to lose that. I don't want that to be lost on us, that our voice doesn't just matter when the reality show we want it to end and go in another direction. It's going to matter forever.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And engagement also means vote time. But again, in your local municipalities, don't only vote, but you know, go to those council meetings, go to city council meetings, go to county commission meetings, go to those town hall meetings that your congressperson has. Let your voice be heard, let your concerns be known, and then follow up. Be sure they're doing what you sent them to do. If your vote means they're representing you, follow them to be sure they're representing you well. Because if they're not representing you well, that same vote that got them in there to represent on your behalf is the same vote you have to have someone else represent you.
Yes. I wanted to just add to that, attend those charter revision
accountable. You have to hold them accountable. Hold them accountable. And you know, a really good example of that is when all of that discussion what is it, in 2017 or whatever, they were talking about the Affordable Care Act, trying to get rid of it, all of that, and how people engaged. They just went to their senators' offices. They camped out, they counted them, and they had to react. They had to, if they wanted to keep those seats, you know. So that's a prime example. But yes, you have to hold people accountable.
Yeah. I want to pivot and talk to you. You mentioned earlier, Val, that Mitch McConnell said I'm going to hold up your appointments. Are there any hopes for cabinet members? Anybody that you hope will be appointed to the Biden-Harris cabinet?
I hope that, I don't know. Well, I hope Susan Rice is part of the State Department. I hope she heads it. I think she has some baggage because of the whole, she was National Security Advisor, of course, under Obama, and that whole Libya fiasco, whatever you want to call it, a fiasco, has kind of plagued her. And these were the Republicans that were there during that time. So I don't know how the confirmation, but we can take a page out of Mr. Trump's book now, and we can make them acting. And so if you make them acting, they don't have to go before the Senate to be confirmed. So we need to start taking a couple of pages out of these playbooks to get what we want done. But I would like to see her. I would like to see Elizabeth Warren, head Treasury. I think she would be great for that. I would like to see, and even though I think Stacey Abrams, although that might just kind of, I would like Stacey Abrams as Attorney General. Quite frankly, I mean, I think she probably wants to engage more with people, but I would love to see her in that position.
I think she is just a force with which to be reckoned. I am so sorry she wasn't on the ticket, and maybe for whatever reasons didn't want it. But God does all things well. She was in a place to really go to war in Georgia in a way that was really needed at this time. But I think
she's finishing Georgia
for being at the level where I had hoped, like many people. I mean, she just seems to be such a strong force for good, and just everything that I would hope for someone in leadership. And oftentimes we think and have been trained and taught you got to be better than them. And I think she fits that description every day, all day. We know of people that are our counterparts who are mediocre at best, and their mediocrity is celebrated. But I think she is a fitting example of being above and beyond the call of what's needed. So I was really hoping that she had wanted to be somewhere in that cabinet up high. So I hope so still.
Yeah, it may, maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just being offered, if it's offered to her. But I would love to see her in that capacity. People have talked about Cory Booker and being a part of the Justice Department, but we'll see. We'll see. I mean, I'm looking forward to see the names. The cabinet is supposed to reflect the country. That's what we've been promised, and I'm looking forward to see the names. Even names I haven't heard. It would be nice to see that. My biggest concern, as much as I have hope, I do have concerns over these next 70 days and the shenanigans that are already being pulled, and that are already putting us at risk. It's sad. It's shameful. It's not, to me, something that you wouldn't expect. It's not unexpected, but it is nonetheless something we need to be thinking about and concerned about. Obviously, we put our trust in the Lord in all things, and He's got us covered. But I'm just thinking about how already we have this man not wanting to give President Biden a president-elect. Let me give title for now. The security briefings, the daily security briefings that he needs to have. He doesn't want to fund for the transition. Of course, he didn't care about the transition, but he did have that in place under President Obama. He's already doing these things to, firing, the head of the national security fired him, or he resigned before he got fired. Already got his hit list for the next 70 days of folks that he wants to see fired in very strategic national security positions. And that's just crazy. This man is, we need to have boots on the ground to get him out of there. He is just insane what he's doing.
Yeah. Darren Williams is joining us. I'm glad you were able to reconnect with us. Thank you, sir. Enrico, did you want to add anything to that?
I am just with it wholeheartedly. And January 20th can't come soon enough. And should 45 still be there, hey, you're trespassing. Handle them as such.
Yeah. And I was hoping Byron would be coming in. He just inboxed me because we started this Love and Stuff journey talking about faithless electors. And so I wanted to get his take on that. Do you think that Mr. Trump is going to try to finagle something in this faithless electors? I wanted to hear from Byron on that, and maybe he'll join us for wrapping up. So Darren, I think you heard in the conversation, we're talking about keeping people engaged as a part of the strategy and getting them involved in this political process. I know we talked about that before. So I just wanted you to share some of your thoughts, because you were talking about mobilize, or organize. And I will agree that we have what I consider these really nice factions of African-American or Black people, but not coalitions of those organizations working as collaboratively as I would like for them to work, from religion, civic, all the way around. And so I'd like to hear some of your thoughts about that sustainability of this engagement. I don't know if you're seeing that in Tulsa, but like I was saying in Detroit, I was in the Kroger's. I normally shop the Meijer, so don't get mad, but I was in the Kroger's and just going down the aisle, getting my fruits and vegetables, trying to eat healthy. I happened to lock eyes with a brother, and it's something about when you see your brother and you're greeting as only we do in the African-American diaspora, but there was such a pride this time. I didn't even have to shout out and be like, Biden. I didn't even have to shout anything out, but it was this pride that we both had. And so I love the way that felt, but I want to see that feeling translated into action, and that action to be something sustainable. So I'd like to hear some of your comments there.
First comment, Meijer, Kroger, two different Jewish families. So this 6 in one hand, half dozen in the other. In terms of the question, I can actually, responding to what you're just asking, I can pick up from where I left off. Mobilize, no, because I didn't even get to mobilizing yet. Organizing. And then there is agenda setting. What is the issue with African-American people? We have been excellent mobilizers. What is mobilizing? That is getting us excited about whatever is happening, and then going out and start hollering, start marching, start doing something. Organizing takes all of that energy and it focuses it into the most important areas of activity. That's where agenda setting comes in. You don't mobilize until you have an agenda, and you can't have an agenda unless you have organized. And with respect to, the comment about Congressional Black Caucus, what's the issue there? Vast majority of African Americans don't even know there's a such thing. The vast majority of our people don't even know that there's a such thing. But the rest of us who know that they've been around since the early 1970s have not seen substantive things that they have done consistently for our people. And so when it comes to organizing, it's going to take, just like you said, you talked about factions. There's a whole lot of little groups of us around everywhere. But organizing means that you bring all of this power together. And let me say this in passing, something that African-American people hate to hear me say, but I got to say it anyway, because it's the truth.
The time that we had very recently to be able to organize as a people since 50 years ago was a completely missed opportunity because it wasn't even so. My personal belief is the greatest thing that Barack Hussein Obama could have been is not the president of the United States, but to be the man who brought African-American people together. He had it all in his power to do. And if he were to do that, I'm getting to the third part of my answer to your question, which I think is all when it comes to this forgiveness and the lovey-dovey, all of this kind of stuff. The healing and forgiveness of America is in the healing and forgiveness of African-American people. Jesus, the people says this to Jesus. The people of his hometown say to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords, physician, heal yourself. What am I saying? I believe that rebuke that they give of Jesus, if African Americans understand how great our purpose and destiny is, far beyond Democratic Party and any of this other stuff that we're talking about tonight, if we really see that our healing and coming together is that for the whole world, that would be the cause and course for change. And so how do we sustain it? How do we keep people engaged? Do that. Be the people that God made us to be. Be an organized people. And when our next generation and children and others see that, when the rest of the world sees that, I think we're the answer to it.
I'm going to bring Brian in. That's great.
I wanted to ask the
Byron
question.
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I just wanted to ask the question to the pastor. So do you think that one of our shortcomings is that we don't have an identifiable leader?
I think that's a big trap to get into. But my short answer to that is no. My short answer to that is yes. I think because it's nebulous nonsense to think that as much power as we are and have as a people, that you cannot have a unifying force to be able to channel, to direct that power somewhere. That's why batteries, that's not the name of them. They're actually called a cell. Why is that? Because all the energy that's generated has to be concentrated in order for it to have its maximum effect. In the very same way that we as a people, as great as we are, the greatest people on the face of this planet, every honest historian will tell you that. I'm not just saying that because it's who I am, but I'm saying that because it's who I am. But as great as we are, if we don't take what we have and concentrate it, we will be in the same position and predicament that we have been for the last 400 years, for the next 400 years. And it ain't because none of their power can hold us if we understand who we are and we concentrate that. Brother Brian, good to have you on here with us, sir.
It's Byron, but
Byron, I'm sorry.
I'm not going to give you an offering. I'm going to send my money to Georgia. I'm not giving you
Look, me too.
Yeah. So Byron, thank you for joining us. I had just said earlier, several years ago, we started out this Love and Stuff journey because you shared some information from Huffington Post that took me back to civics in 8th grade with Dr. Rivers, my least favorite teacher. Because I got in trouble, but that's another story. And we talked about the faithless elector. And so I raised this question earlier. Do you think that Trump will try in some way to utilize I think he's going to pull out any stop, but do you expect for him to try to do something along the lines of the faithless elector? You can't hear me? I can't hear you. Can everybody hear me?
We hear you.
I hear you. I don't hear him.
But I think Darren said it best earlier. Trump showed his hand. He's a horrible poker player.
Mhm.
He showed his hand,
Mhm.
and you know, my father taught me how to play. I'm a card playing preacher. My father taught me how to play cards by beating me. And one day he strategically let me see what was in his hands by leaving the room. I took a peek at his hand. And when he got back, I guess I caught the Holy Ghost and say, Dad, I can't play that hand. Why you can't? He's well, I when you left, I took a look at your hand. He said, so you can't play because you know what's in my hand? Yeah, it's not fair. I know what's in your hand. He said, listen, son, you may know what's in my hand, but you don't know how I'm going to play my hand. So let's play cards. And he still beat me, even though I knew what was in his hand.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a Trump strategy even right there. This is what I'm going to do. Here's my hand. This is how, and we're so busy arguing about what he's saying that he's sliding in and trying to do exactly what he said.
Mm-hmm.
And with his people, for sure, the strategy is working.
And with his people, the strategy is working.
I'm not giving you an offering either. I'm sending it to Georgia. Just these preachers, these preachers and these points. I'm not giving you an offering. Just so that you're clear. Byron can speak to us. Let me make sure I can hear you. Nope, still not. Nope, I don't know. Okay, all right. So I want to go back to something, Darren, because Val talked about the Congressional Black Caucus already having a robust plan. Should we start there, relate that to people, bring the factions together and say whatever needs to be said? So you talked about mobilization, you talked about organizing, but they've already done some groundwork. Should we not know what's in that plan as organizations and then come together and strategize, organize, mobilize? Why not start there since it's already something that has been done?
Yeah, I say no. That is not, to my mind, that is not the next course of action. And why? Because it was developed in and among the Congressional Black Caucus, which are only representatives of the African American communities.
If Darren, on that point,
yes.
Do we know that it was developed without the input of some of these factions? Do we know that?
I know from my perspective, and we can interview brother Enrico and Sister Valerie and see from all of their connections if they know of any input from the community that has the development. I absolutely don't know that the Congressional Black Caucus has reached out to anybody to develop it.
But if we learn that they have, would you be okay as that as a starting point? Is my question.
I think there's still more questions than that because, you know, and I hate to use this, but it's true as true can be, because I think unaware Black people used it as a cry for independence. That as diverse as our community is ideologically, and people say it this way, we're not a monolithic community. That's what you hear hear said about us, which is absolutely very true. My point, though, in referencing that is there are, I have to say it this way, the question has to be asked if the Congressional Black Caucus and whoever they may have reached out to really understands and knows what the needs of our community or desires of our community are.
And if they do, is that a good place to start? Is my question.
Well, if they do, then yes, I say yes. I concede that.
Okay.
Yes.
Have you had an opportunity to review this bill?
I haven't at all. Absolutely not.
Okay. All right.
I have not, and I'm eager to see it.
Starting place to at least see what it is, right? Because we don't even know what's in it.
Absolutely.
And if I had known that it was robust, and I'm saying robust, I defer to Valerie because this is her sweet spot. She loves these kind of things, so she'll research this to death. Yeah. But had I known that, I would say we should have been pulling Ice Cube into a room, because that's not how we do. That's not how Black people do.
And that's my point right there. That is the point. Yes, sir. I agree.
Okay, so let me see if Byron can speak to us now. I thought, make sure. Byron, can you talk?
Hello, questing?
Yeah, we got you. We hear you.
All right.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Good stuff.
Okay, great stuff. And so back to faithless elector, tell me what are your thoughts about tricks that might be happening?
Well, I don't have any doubt that that Trump or his cohorts or comrades, whatever, in the GOP would like to whether it be switch the electors with their own whatever. The problem he's having is, and it's another reason why he's talking about stop the count. Problem he's having is that his deficit keeps growing. So it ultimately it's not even really a close election. I mean, he's talking about and he hasn't detailed to it, but he's talking about filing some suit even here in Michigan. As it stands right now, he lost Michigan by almost 150,000 votes. So, like, it's like he's throwing a lot of stuff on the wall to see what'll stick. But the problem he's having is that his lead Biden's lead continues to grow as these various battleground states continue to count their votes. So, like that's it's not like not really like a Georgia where and Biden's lead actually grew there too. I think he's votes in Georgia now, but Pennsylvania is not close. Michigan's not close. Wisconsin is 20,000, somewhat close, but not enough to where a recount or anything would really overturn anything. So I think he'll try whatever he can do, but his biggest problem is the fact that ultimately his the margin really isn't there for him. I think that they would love to click stuff and steal it if they could. It's not close enough. And that's why you hear him talking about stop the count. Like he wants them to stop counting because his deficit keeps getting bigger.
Val, you were going to chime in.
Only in those Black communities does he want to stop the count.
Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of a.
In Arizona, he said keep counting.
Keep counting in Arizona, but supposedly, it is really what he and his people are saying is that somehow, because it ain't just Michigan, that went for Biden. It really was Detroit and Wayne County. Same thing in Philly. In Georgia, it was Atlanta.
And Fulton County.
So it's these Black cities that deliver. It's these Black cities and counties and areas that delivered these state wins for Biden, and that's really how these niggers that voted. They did some trickery. But yeah, like you said, he's not.
Yeah.
It's
certainly
he ain't contesting Arizona.
Yeah.
He wants them to keep counting Arizona.
I want to go back to this plan that we're all going to read. This robust plan that is, ready to be acted upon. I want to ask you though, Byron, if there is a plan, a real robust plan, and you haven't seen it, but our representatives have come up with this plan, the people that we have asked to represent us, right? If they have developed a plan, would you want to use that plan as a starting point, or would you want to scrap that plan and start over?
And you're asking if we don't get a chance to see, or if we haven't seen it, or
so you get a chance to see it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I guess
go ahead.
My answer would be on, you know, something needs to be a starting point.
Okay, I missed a slight part of what you were saying. Did you say it could be a starting point?
I was saying something needs to be a starting point. We got to start somewhere. But
Yeah.
I guess it would depend on, I don't think it would be adequate, like, say, members of Congressional Blacks that came up with it. I would, you still have to reach out to, whether it be constituents, whether it be organizers, activists, etc. Like, it's got to be other people in the room involved in, what it is that the lawmakers come up with.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be, I would be anxious to. Okay.
I would just urge people to read it. I mean, to me, it's a starting point. It's a place that's, and I know, we have a lot of voices, like the pastor was saying. But to me, it's already passed in Congress. Okay, it's sitting on Mitch McConnell's desk. To me, it has a lot of very, and I'll say basic. I'll use that word, but it talks about the coronavirus and how it, fund for the Black community that has been impacted upon it. It talks about raising the minimum wage to $15. It talks about infrastructure. It's about clean water. It talks about contractors and using and hiring and training African American men or African Americans ages 18 to 39. It talks about getting them into the trades. It talks about minority-owned businesses and money, set aside for. It talks about food desert. Talks about those kinds of themes. HBCUs, and so it's broad. Mm-hmm. And it's in its thought, and I think that it even talks about maybe the only thing that it doesn't have, which I would think for sure there needs to be some kind of, it may not have as robust of a discussion of criminal justice reform, but I don't think that was the intent of this particular bill. It was about advancing Black families and jobs. So I would just encourage people to look at it. I mean, it's a beginning. Yeah. It's a starting point in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think the challenge for some is because we don't know who necessarily was involved in the development.
Who was in the room? Who was at the table?
Yeah, there is this distrust with the people that we have put in power, but that's a whole nother conversation. Because really,
if they're representing us, and we've got to do more research on who we choose to represent us. Again, I'm going to lift up the name of Alma Adams. She's my congressional representative. She stays engaged with us. I've got her number. She's got my number, and I would hope that others, as we talk about being engaged and being involved, if you don't even know who your congressional person is and whether or not they are part of the caucus to even know of such information, then what are we talking about really being engaged? We ourselves have to be first engaged to know what's going on, because we're talking about a starting point. If there is indeed, this bill has been passed by the House and waiting for the Senate to take action, that train has left the station. It's on the move. We need to be aware of, to be knowledgeable of, to either get behind or say, hey, there's some things that need to be readdressed.
Yeah. And you're one of my favorite people in the world. I love you dearly. And with all due respect, you're a pastor, so your representative better have your number. But not everybody else will feel as engaged. Maybe we should be. You are absolutely correct. But it might be easier for her to connect with you because you got a whole group of parishioners that are voters versus just the individual. But I hear what you're saying. We all do have a responsibility, but there appears to be this distrust as of late of those that are supposed to reflect us and represent us in these matters. And that might have some reason why we haven't delved into this bill to see, at least delve in it to tell Ice Cube, look, knucklehead, here's the bill. Forgive my knucklehead use to Ice Cube, but here is the bill. Here is what has already been developed. And I know you would say Roland Martin, pulled them on TV. Maybe we pull them in the back room and say, here's the message that we want you to understand that these people have been working on since January or before. And here's where it is. Here's how we move it forward. And more of that kind of talk than letting him get out there and make a complete, I can't even say what Herbert Holmes would say, bless his memory, out there just with no covering, saying, this is what we want. I'm going to advance a plan when we have something that's already in writing. So I'm going to go back to that question again, because I know Darren is not going to be a proponent of starting here, but where do we start if not here?
I don't say that I'm not a proponent of it.
Okay.
This is what I do say, which you've talked about very clearly, and I do agree with, that the notion of suspicion that surrounds who is the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, understand what I'm saying. I love Black people. I love us. I just love us, and I'm for us. So don't misunderstand me to be talking negatively against in the sense of that. What I'm saying is this, that for the 40 plus years that the Congressional Black Caucus has existed as an organization, same thing I said about what my personal belief of Barack Obama, former President Obama was the greater purpose to organize us as the people. Congressional Black Caucus has never took up the notion of trying to bring the Black people of America together. And why is that? Because they're politicians. And when a politician gets elected to office, the primary goal becomes to get reelected to office and to be able to stay there. And so their constituency is the largest scope of African-American people that they see. What I'm saying is, as African-Americans, the outlook of politics for us of necessity is always different than the outlook of politics for everybody else. Why? Because our position and condition in the country is always different than everybody else's is. We are victims of the American society. We are not citizens in the sense that everybody else is. The entire society rests upon our not succeeding, not on our succeeding. And so anybody who gets elected to office as an African American, there's a whole different game plan that's got to exist. And your scope has got to be all of African America, not just your constituency. And so they do have a plan in place, right? Okay, it's what's there. Okay, how it really reflects where we are and what we really need, it's a moot question because it is where it is. I think for the sake of the unity of African-American people and organization, for us to get behind it is a very meaningful step. Yes, Brother Marcus, for us to actually stand behind them to ensure that that gets passed, I think is a very meaningful step for two reasons. Number one, because it will show our unity and organization as a people. And the second thing is it will give the African-American community writ large the opportunity to call them brothers and sisters in and say, listen, this is how we need to now start talking about what African-American people need and how we need to move. And so I think, yes, getting behind it works in two very important ways for our community.
Yeah. That unlocked another lever because I was thinking maybe the traditional way that they used to engage the African American community has become so diluted and diverse that it's not effective. And the way I think that they used to engage them was the church. But the church has become so diverse and diluted in many ways that it is not as communal as it once was.
And
I
more than that,
I just want to hear in general everybody's thoughts on that because I can't think of a time that election cycle wasn't centered around the church and every politician was in the church and every politician was going to the church and relying on the church as both a platform and as a town hall to get its feedback and to get its message across. I just don't see that anymore because I think the church has changed significantly. What are your thoughts, all of you, on that?
Let me say very quickly, yes, the difficulty using the old way of Congressional Black Caucus is challenged because why? Very two significant reasons. Because there is the existence of the squad and the existence of a Black Lives Matter movement whose messaging resonates much more soundly with the majority of African American people than traditional channels of African American political leadership.
Okay.
Which then leads to this for me is if those voices are reaching the majority, what happened to the traditional voice that was? Did we lose touch with the common voice, with the common folk? Did we lose touch? How did we lose touch? Why did we lose touch? Were we more concerned about did we become guilty of being the very thing we despised?
Okay.
Um,
Val or Byron?
Well, I would say as far as that's concerned, I think particularly the Black church today, not completely, but by and large has kind of forgotten where it's come from. Meaning you have a lot of Black churches, Black leadership that purposefully are or don't get involved in issues, anything that doesn't pertain to the spirit or spirituality or godly things. Forgetting that, couple generations ago, the church was the backbone of the civil rights movement and so many other political and social movements that took place that wouldn't have happened if not church. So I think the challenge in reach, you have a generation of, I'll say, millennials, Gen X, or young Gen X and Y and Z and everything else. You have young Black folk that, to an extent, don't have the same respect for the Black church because they see the Black church away from those social issues, whether it be, and it doesn't just have to be, issues of civil rights or whatever. It can just, wages, healthcare, other things that affect people. Like you can't just, you can't only be concerned with souls and soul saving. You got to be concerned with, how people are going to live and how they going to eat and how they going to, if they get sick, will they be able to go to the doctor? And is Big Mama going to get her social security check? And all of those things, I think it makes it more difficult to, as you said, to reach, us collectively in that way, because, you have a younger generation of Black folks who are backing away from the church, and then you have black church leadership that has really forgotten its roots in that regard.
Okay. Val, you want to add anything?
No, not really. I think for me, I can kind of agree with most that's been said, but I also think one reason why, and I can't remember which of the pastors said this, but they were talking about how AOC had a national platform to talk about, I think it was you, Pastor White, talk about the new Green Deal and that kind of thing. And one of the things that we also have to be aware of and to make sure that we are making sure that they are participants is our own Black media. I mean, we need to also make sure that our own Black media are and I've been hearing this, in some of the coverage of the election, that our own Black media is invited to the table as well, that our own Black media has the opportunity that has a form that can reach our people, that they are given the funding. I think the federal funds there, because there is some federal funding that goes to media organizations. And so I think that we have to be mindful that we need to make sure that we have that our sources of information are, first of all, identified and funded so that we can, on our own, get our own message out to our own people. And so I think that that's something that's lacking too. Yeah, we have our folks that that are on mainstream media, but they are carrying the message of mainstream media. And so we have to make sure that we look at those kind of other avenues to promote and to get the message out to our people. Everybody not watching MSNBC, and maybe everybody shouldn't be, but we need to have, to start thinking about our own networks, thinking about, our own way of getting our message out across all of these platforms that we are really blessed to have.
I want to pivot slightly. And we're talking with Pastor Enrico White, Valerie Colbert Olsen-Wady, Pastor Darren Williams, Byron Stanfield, and thank you, those of you that have joined in. Such a groundswell of pride, particularly in the African American community, for lifting our voices, elevating our voices, and being heard during this election cycle. And I want to talk a little bit more about sustainability. How do we sustain this momentum? How does the average person sustain this momentum? I know we talked some about get involved, get engaged, attend meetings. What other things might a person do of getting involved so that they become a sustainable voice as we move toward midterms and other things that we need to accomplish?
That's a good question. Because as everybody knows, thankfully for the presidential election, folks had voted in record number and came and showed up and showed out. But man, those midterms and those off season, if you will, elections, boy, it's hard pressed to keep people, involved and engaged, and to even right now we're talking about, trying to get these last 2 Senate seats in Georgia, so that so that McConnell won't be able to stonewall every single thing that Biden wants to get accomplished. And the midterms and the the off year elections are just as important, if not more. But it's difficult to get the majority of people to understand that.
Why do you think that is, Byron? Why do you
People
think
talk
that
about what Obama didn't do and not realizing that he didn't have control. His party didn't have control of House or Senate for a good number of years that he was in office. So McConnell was able to do his regular Grim Reaper thing and just block everything.
And so why do you think it's so difficult to get people to be engaged as you characterize those off-season and midterm election cycles? Why is that so difficult?
I think one reason is people get, especially these days, I think, quite honestly, people do get burnout from any and all things pertaining to politics. And again, with this, we're still going through stuff and drama with the Orange King and all of that. But
the Orange King.
But this election cycle was exhausting. I would say 2016 was kind of exhausting. Like people just get burnt out. So once everything is over, I think who aren't political by nature or aren't political junkies or don't really get into current events and things of that nature, I think they're just ready to tune out once the presidential election is over and done with. And they're like, okay, I did my part. I went out and I casted a vote. Now leave me alone for another 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
I agree that
I think part of it is that people just quite honestly kind of get burnt out.
Okay. All right. Darren, you were going to say?
I agree that part is true because the understanding of most people is I voted, I did my job, and especially when your candidate gets elected, okay, I'm good. But Sister Valerie said earlier something I think is critically important. She harked back to the days of the Civil Rights Movement, the organizations who actually had campaigns that wasn't running for office. Their campaign was to teach the African American community what voting was about, what the importance of the process, why you were not finished after you left the poll. And so I think to your point, how to the burnout piece and how to keep people from fizzling off or keep them engaged and all the way through the next process. What I believe is true, especially about us as African Americans, and let me give my evidence for it first, because I know we don't teach our people about voting. What I believe is true based on that is that number one, we don't even know why we vote. Number two, we don't even know how to vote. Now, don't misunderstand what I'm saying. We do know that we should vote. We do know to vote, but how to and why to are completely different matters. They are above and beyond just the civic duty to go to the polls. What do I mean? Very simply this, and it's been referenced both. Brother Byron has just mentioned, Sister Valerie mentioned earlier, that there is a 2-year window that we have that we don't start getting ready for it the month before it's about to come up. The day after this presidential election is when we've got to be preparing for what is coming next as our duty, as our civic duty. And that is important because in order for, and I have to say it this way, your vote to count, your voting has to make sense. And just going in a ballot booth and filling out a ballot and turning in is not how voting makes sense. That's the process of voting. But it takes blocks of voting. And it takes an organized effort in voting. And it's been said earlier, I'm just echoing what's been said. And then it takes money behind that block of voters, because that's the only thing that politicians listen to after they get in office is money that is coming to their campaigns and coming to them. That's what they listen to. And so I think in order to keep us on track, that part of our organizing campaign is we've got to teach ourselves, our constituency, our community about voting, why we vote, why to vote, and how to vote, how we should
there's
vote.
an educational piece that you're saying is important.
It's critical. Yes,
to keep
education.
people engaged. Okay.
Yes.
Anybody else want to raise anything else that's critically important to the sustainability? Not a soul.
Okay, I'm gonna say something else here. Let me say one other thing. Let me say one other thing. We've gotta lead our children, and I can't believe I'm saying this. We've got to lead our children, and I'm talking about our young children, from young children. We've got to lead them in the understanding,
Yes,
that they ought to seek being mayors of cities, being governors of states.
Why don't you believe that you're saying this? Because you're not gonna have no kids. What you saying?
No, because I'm not a person who subscribes to the philosophy that the American political system is flawed and broken. I don't believe that at all.
I believe
it is inherently corrupt, and that we need to scrap it and start all over again. But for the sake of being in the system and the way that it is, if our hope for it is to change, then we've got to start raising our children to be, and I hate to say this, because that's what other people do. They tell them that they need to be governed. And I'm saying, because I hate those equivalent, there's no equivalency between us and other people. But for the sake of the discussion, we've got to start raising our children to see themselves, to be politicians and to be in those offices.
Okay. And so, Byron, you need to raise your sons. Hear that? You need to raise
Byron.
Sons to be mayors and governors.
That's right.
Right. Okay. All right. So we need to, we need to let them matriculate in the process to do that.
That's right. Definitely.
And not only, and also to that point, not only to aspire to the office, but to aspire to know that to aspire to be in those positions that get the person to the office. I think about my kid. She's a big political person. She says, I don't want to be a politician, but I want to pick. I want to make the people who are in the office. I want to be in the capacity where I'm thinking the policy, where I'm pushing the candidate. That's that's the part of politics that I want to be engaged in.
Power.
And so that's where we need to teach our children that as well.
All of that.
Be the kingmaker and be the king. So and we need to start putting that into their minds, that it is possible. Actually, not possible. We see it's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it's 10:18. This is some heavy thought leader thinking for some. And for the average person that does feel that he or she, we're mighty proud. We voted, it counted. It feels like it counted, even though there are challenges against it. What are you saying, each of you, to the average person who is, like Byron said, not as engaged, just, happy to be able to vote in each election, maybe not voting strategically yet, as you espoused, Darren? What would you say to that person to get them moving the day after election, in my mind, which was Sunday, because it wasn't over till Saturday, but so Sunday morning, what should the average person be doing to be engaged, to prepare for their next election in Detroit, where we are, some of us are, we're going to be electing a mayor. So, we should already be thinking about that, and city council people, but what should we be doing as the layperson who hasn't, spent all of this time as a political junkie and being that engaged, what should he or she do starting today?
I think I've heard it think from Pastor Williams and from Valerie. I think both I heard each say the education piece. It is so important that we, those who have voted, they've seen the process at work. Now, why do we do? How do we do? When do we do? What do we do? That whole educational piece that, as was stated earlier, used to take place in the church. And by the way, Micah 6:8 still stands true. He still wants us to love justice, mercy, and walk humbly with our God. Jesus, who was a big social justice person. Where did we go wrong, church? But to educate our people and you got problems in your neighborhood. How do we do it? Concerns in your city. How do we go about it? Meet the folks who are the movers and shakers. Inspire them to become movers and shakers. But I think the education piece, and not just saying it, but showing it, taking them by the hand and letting them meet some of these movers and shakers and to inspire them to become the movers and shakers. Mm-hmm. Education should bring about some inspiration.
And so that's what we will do to help them. What should they do on their own?
I go back to the education should bring about some inspiration. If it doesn't bring about, I can't inspire. I personally, I can educate Marcus, but I can't personally inspire him. He's got to be fired. He's got to have that fire that moves beyond that excitement about the moment and get engaged in the moment.
Okay. Someone else. What should the average person be doing today? And I want them to be able to walk through with one of the many things you think. I've said it, but you've said so much. So say one thing that they can hear.
I think just on a very simple level, for someone who has voted, let's say you found out who your senator is, your congressman is, go get on their email list and get their email updates to come to your email. That's a very simple, easy thing to keep you informed about what your congresswoman or your senator is doing. And it allows you the opportunity to communicate with that office as well. So if it's just a basic, I voted, I've done my job, I may want to do a little bit more, but I'm not trying to get out here and, pound the pavement or, do anything like that. But I want to kind of still remain civically involved. That is probably one of the easiest thing you can do is to be a part of get involved, and get on the email distribution list for your congressman or your senator. Get the information, you get what the issues are, and you have a way in which to communicate your dissatisfaction. Should you become that much engaged where you want to show your dissatisfaction for something? Oh, I want you to make sure that you don't vote for that person for the Supreme Court justice. I mean, that's something that you can do. That's pretty rudimentary.
Yeah, that's great. Let me go to the comments really quickly, just to acknowledge some folks that have come through the room. Dr. Gerald Shiner, Leandra Patrick Barnes has come, Carrie Mondanito, I may have said that wrong, Paula Patterson, Michael Flanoyo, Esther Smith. Thank you so much. I'm always flattered when she comes through the room, almost nervous. Vanessa Montgomery, Phyllis Singleton, and Deon Faulkner. And I wanted to recognize Deon because she's in our Love and Stuff community and she successfully won Van Buren School Board. So congratulations to you for that. We're very proud of you. Keep up the good work. Okay, whom else?
But Valerie, I really like that point right there. Get on that email list. Make those calls to your congressperson's office, your senator's office. They have to log every call, every email that comes in. So your voice really is being heard. They have to log every call and every email that comes in.
Okay.
I think I would say, I think I said for the average, this is the time to really open up your eyes and see. It's the time for sight. While everybody before the beginning of the year were thinking of their themes for the year, everybody came up with 2020. It's going to be about vision. It's vision, it's vision, it's vision, 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 vision. Holy Ghost took me in a whole different direction. The Holy Ghost impressed upon me that light is the issue for 2020, because in order to have vision, light must be present. So there's no sight at all without any light at all. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris turned the light on for African American people Saturday night with her comments about the importance of Black women and Black people historically, and his promise that African Americans have always had his back, and now he has ours. What's the light? What is there to see? Our power as people in this country. We need to open up our eyes and see, because our power is such that even if I feel my ancestors coming up now, even if the politicians don't do right, we can still make stuff happen. We just need to see who we are and what our power is.
And what does that new light, that epiphany, look like in action for the average person?
It looks like us being one people, putting all of these major differences and petty differences alike, putting all of that stuff aside and seeing that our ability to come out of the hole that we've been in since we've been on these shores is not in anybody else's hand, because Joe Biden can't save us. He cannot. No other president in the country will be able to save us. It's all in us as a people. So it looks like us loving up and picking ourselves up and moving.
Okay. Byron.
I wish there was a way to kind of show to just the average, everyday, our brothers and sisters who aren't really engaged on that level. I wish there was a way to really show them, or to just kind of iterate the fact that nothing in our society gets done outside of political power. And you can just look to what Trump and his people are doing right now, grasping at straws, trying to hold on to that power, to understand how important it is. If the power wasn't important, they wouldn't be, at this point, even trying to, think of ways where they could, basically usurp, if that's even the right word, the will of the voters by, just discarding that and doing what they can do to hold on to power. They're showing how important having that political power is, how important that capital is. So if somehow we could get our folks to understand the importance of it, I think we could get the majority of people to really stay engaged. Because, even with this, it 9 times out of 10, well, more than likely, what they're doing now is not going to be successful. But what it is, what they are being successful in is, giving red meat for their base. They're riling them up. They're giving them a rallying cry. They're giving them something to be excited about. Even though they're going to end up losing, ultimately, I think I read something earlier today that said he's planning on doing rallies as soon as tomorrow. He's about to do rallies, where I guess he's gonna read obituaries of people that supposedly voted in these swing states, and so I'm saying like their messaging is, for whatever reason, so much better than ours. Like they know how to keep their people in their people engaged, and we, the good guys, we haven't figured that out yet. So ultimately my answer.
Well, that's because we're being bit too. Go ahead. We're too busy being good guys.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean that's true. We, you go back to 4 years ago, where First Lady Michelle Obama, talked about when they go low, we go high. Like that don't really work. Like you can't, when people don't fight, you can't beat somebody fight that is unwilling to fight fair. You can't win a fair fight with somebody that and that's kicking and biting and punching below the belt and things of that nature. Like you gotta match them. So no, you're right. We're better than them in that. Like they don't care about you exposing, their wickedness and hypocrisy and all of that. All they care about is getting the power. And they know they're even with this voter turnout, it like Trump is going to lose the popular vote by maybe 5-6 million votes. They understand that their ideas are not popular with the majority of the population, with the majority of the country, and they're not going to win elections on their ideas. So that's where voter suppression and gerrymandering and all this other trickery comes into play. Because if they just do it one person, one vote, and just let people, like they didn't even have a platform this year, like with their convention, like their entire platform was just Donald Trump. They literally abolished their platform. They had no platform at the RNC this year.
Yeah. And so as we prepare to go to a close, I want to ask you, and I know I got two preachers on here, so I know when you preach, you're going to try to prophesy, or you might prophesy. I'm not saying that you are Paula White or Brian Carn. I'm not saying that at all. What's ahead? What if you could look forward to a year from now? What's ahead? What do you expect is going to be happening a year from now? What's ahead?
Did you give that prologue to the question for the preachers to speak first, or did you just say that preacher thing, just saying it?
I said that preacher thing so that y'all wouldn't prophesy and call the African angels and call the African angels. I don't want you to do that. That's why I did that.
You said a year from now.
Yes. Or what's ahead, whichever one you want to answer. What's ahead? But yes, if you could, because that's going into that prophesying. What's going on a year from now?
Two things. A year from now, America will be a very different nation because the pandemics will have changed what we understand so much. No such thing as a normal again, nor even new normal. I believe a nuanced normal, which means that change will come so rapidly and successively. We'll have to continue to get used to something while the next thing is coming right up on us in that way. Second thing, when I talk about pandemic, I'm not just talking about the health pandemic. Second thing, I think that if the nation within a year's time, and especially the church, white church, has not grabbed racism and addressed it and white supremacy, I believe that America will be entering in a civil war.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure what it looks like, but my prayer is that we just stay focused. That change that we're looking for is not going to be immediate. It's not going to be instantaneous. So what does it look like? I hope it looks like us staying engaged, staying on top, and staying aware. I am reading in a chat from one of my members, Angela Poole, who says we must stay focused and fight the right fight. The dirty blows are always intended to provoke us out of our posture and trick us into wasting our energies on the wrong things. So next year, I hope we're still focusing on these things here, because when things don't get media attention, it's out of sight, out of mind, even for us. So I hope a year from now, we're grading ourselves on how we're doing based on what we say we want right now.
I know at least next year you won't be moderating my show. No, you won't be reading my comments. Hold back now.
I just have to see who that was. I do apologize.
Okay. Byron or Val?
Well, hope
ladies
next
first.
year.
He said ladies first.
I hope next year that we have, I do believe next year we will have a COVID vaccine. So I think in terms of the pandemic, I don't think we'll get back to, and I think the pastor's right, we're never going to be the normal that we were in 2019. I think in many ways, so many things have changed, some that we like, and we necessarily want to go back to the old way. And but I do think unless we can truly harness, and I say this, love, it can be in such a way that it is felt and palpable among most of us, because it won't be among all of us. And I do mean our detractors too. I do believe that we are going to see ourselves as a very divisive nation and a violent one. And so unless we can truly harness what we know love to be, and we know love to be in many forms, but the love of God, the love for one another, the love for your neighbor, all of those things that is demonstrated in the word of what love is. And unless if we cannot demonstrate that and touch people in a way that kind of love transforms, a little bit concerned about what the future of this country holds. Mm-hmm. I say that because, when you listen to people that don't think like you, or you listen to just say the base of the Trump supporter, I'll just choose them, I'm just always taken back by, and I really shouldn't be after all the 4 years, but the thinking and the visceral hate, and it's alarming. And so again, if we can't show that love and that light cannot touch people. You know, I think as a nation, as a people, we got problems. We got problems.
Yeah.
But I like to
Byron?
think that
Oh,
I like
sorry.
to think that love is conquers. Love is something that is well beyond just what we do, but it's spiritual. It's a whole lot of things, and but it is very sad to think that. It's very sad to think that, but it is. And while you're thinking of it, and we keep it in our minds, maybe that continues us to activate it.
Yeah, and before Byron chimes in, you know, our whole platform is around the love consideration, right? And this thought of the beloved community in my mind in a year will be we will really confront what it is to love yourself and neighbor, who is your neighbor. And that love consideration will be challenged unlike ever before because there'll be no buffer, right? We now know who our neighbor is visibly, and now we have to contend with what does that represent and how much of the me that I'm supposed to be expressing in love to my neighbor really has that vitriolic hate. So all buffers get removed, and the consideration around love for who is your neighbor and what does that mean to love your neighbor and identify with your neighbor, I think is going to be presented to us as never before.
But you know, nothing heals until the light hits it. You know, bandages have to come off at some time for the light for healing to begin. So if this is the plan for healing to begin truly in this nation, for us to truly, for not only us, well, we've always known racism existed, okay, but there are people who are in our lives who did not believe it. And if that's the way in which that conversation has to be had, then that may be the way that conversation has to be had. And I heard something very poignant to me. It was poignant and true and sad at the same time. But I heard a commentator, or I may have read it, say that with the African American community, change comes, and it's unfortunate, at our bloodshed. And I say that, you know, we got the Civil Rights Act or at bloodshed when JFK died. We got the voting rights. We got the Housing Act when Martin Luther King died. All of that, you know, we got the Voting Rights Act after folks, you know, were pretty much mauled down in Selma. I mean, all of those things, it was poignant and true and sad at the same time. You know, even the Confederate flag came down, what is it, in North Carolina?
South Carolina.
Those folks South Carolina, when the folks at the church were murdered. I mean, you know, that's a change, a poignant change. And no, I don't want it to be bloodshed, but I do see what the pastor is saying, that if we can't bring that light and that love to fruition, that may be what happens.
And can I say very quickly one thing before Brother Byron? It's on. I'm looking for permission, Brother Marcus.
I gave it. It was my slide.
Okay, and it's with what Sister Valerie is just saying there. That's why we've got to be so critically careful when it comes to this piece of allies and with people talking about throwing in with justice for us. And what do I mean? The sister said it beautifully. Sister Valerie said it. At every step and every turn in in the history of this country, African Americans have had skin in the game, life on the line, blood, sweat, and tears. anybody who does not commit themselves to that same level for us cannot really be with us. We need to see that and understand that.
Okay. Thank you for that. Byron?
Looking forward, I see on the bright side, I see us finally some sort of handle on the pandemic, because we will finally have some competent leadership on the federal level. On the negative side, like, I can't help but think that our divide is just going to, it's just going to intensify, because, like it or not, for some people, 20th, their savior, their king is be in office, and he's already setting the groundwork to be like this, just perpetual outside. And so you're gonna have these 70 some plus million people that voted for him, that are just gonna be enough for the next 4 years. And they're, they're already mumbling under their breath, this was stolen from them. And this, you have prominent, white evangelicals talking about how it's been stolen, and this is the word outside the church. Like, this social divide is about to grow, unfortunately. I see, and that's, like I said, it's unfortunate, but like I don't see, because again, like, for all the talk that a lot of people, particularly church leadership, for all the talk that a lot of people years ago saying how this man was put into office and appointed by God. They weren't saying that 8 and 12 years ago, and not saying that today. So they only believe God appoints, the people they like into leadership positions, and they're not going to accept it. And it's unfortunate. I think Pastor, it looks like we're toward toward that on some level. Hopefully it's not a large level, but that's.
Yeah. A good friend of mine always says it's better to be pissed off than pissed on. And Black people have been pissed on for an inordinately long time. And so the other group of people might be pissed off for a period of time. But hopefully, as we were pissed off and felt pissed on in 2016 or whatever the last election was, that people can come to some understanding that if America appears to be moving forward, if we come out of this pandemic, if we return to some economic solvency, that there might be some good in this administration if people's pockets or principles or policies are what they want it to be moving forward. So hopefully, I don't hope for a civil war, but I don't disagree that certain.
Yeah, that's not going to matter to them, unfortunately, because for a lot of for a lot of his followers in particular, they don't vote based on policy. They don't vote based on even what's good for them in their everyday life. The vast majority of them vote against their own interest, whether it be economically or otherwise. Like, so it doesn't matter what, because I do think that a Biden-Harris administration is going to be better for the nation from an economic standpoint, from a healthcare standpoint. I mean, Trump social cut, and you would think that his support of Social Security check would be worried about the fact that his plan was going to defund it within 3 years. None of that matters. The good that could or probably it's all about tribalism and nationalism and racism, pretty much. Like they don't, they could give a care about. I mean, you hear these people talk about, complaining about a Biden tax plan that is only going to affect who make more than $400,000 a year, literally as if that's going to affect them. And it's not, but something to complain about. Whatever advances we make in the country pertaining to the pandemic and economics, et cetera, like that's not going to matter.
Okay. Final thoughts as we come to a close.
And they
I
still
want to thank.
don't want to wear a mask either.
You're right. I want to thank Enrico White, Valerie Colbert Osunwedi, Darren Williams, and Byron Stanfield. Any final thoughts as we hurry to a close? I feel like a preacher now as I'm hurrying to a close.
That's only your first one. That's just your first
Get
one.
about 3 more
I
times.
don't feel like a preacher. I just said that.
If I can say something about this panel, there's been a whole lot of talk about the brothers this election cycle, and how some of the brothers got siphoned away to Trump. But it has been my pleasure to be on a panel with brothers tonight. So I have appreciated your thoughts and your comments, and got a lot of things to think about based on some of the things that you said. And so I do. I love the ideal that so many people are saying that so many of our brothers went over to the Trump side. It's or are apolitical. It's nice to be on this panel with 4. That's including you, Marcus, but 3 panel people who are stellar brothers. So that's my comment for the night.
Yeah, and stay tuned, because of course I want to Darren's point, I want to see us live. Of course, there's some production value to it, right? But I want to see us live after having read this plan that the Congress has done, and maybe some other requisite reading that I might hope to suggest that we read, and then come and talk about the things that we think that we want in a plan, and list out all of these factions, the NAACP, the Urban League, all of these organizations, and maybe share with them our thoughts to see what input that have they had in the plan, just for the groundswell of using this platform to educate people about the process and get them engaged and involved. People that know me personally will know that Valerie Colbert Osunwedi is one of my favorite people to talk to for her brilliant mind. So thank you for the accolades. But we also invited a few other folks to join in this kind of think tank that I hope to do live and have this discussion where we really do kind of a working group around some of the things that Darren talked about. But I think we all have to read, the bill that's before Senator McConnell, whomever, before them, and consider it, and then try to find out what its nexus is. And then really, I think it's important, if we wait around for other factions to come and say, we're going to do this or we're going to do that, we'll be 2024 talking about doing something. So I think if we just, start here, with our modest plan and brilliant minds, to have some discussion around things that we think are important, then we can share that information and education with the masses. Because again, a lot of people would have had no idea what is this plan that Valerie's talking about, and where can we read it, and what's in it, and what's in it for me, right? We all want to know what's in the plan for us, and how does it speak to my existence as an African American? And by the way, who was at that table? Which is important to me. Who was at that table crafting this plan, and what were the inputs that went into that plan? And hey, by the way, you all left out the whole police force, excessive force, police brutality. You left out some things that we think should be in a plan. And so, that's what I'm hoping to look forward to with the same group. You're right, Valerie, there are some great brothers. By no stretch of the imagination, I had just these brothers in mind. And again, especially Byron, because at the very beginning, he was talking about the Huffington Post. People were coming on Love and Stuff to meet each other. But I was trying to find out, talk more about the political agenda. So, and it's evolved with great minds and presence like yours. So I think it's a gift and an opportunity. So thank you for being here. Anyone else, last thoughts?
Just quickly for me, great people do great things and have great conversation. And so for Brother Marcus, your great idea and what you're doing with Love and Stuff and everything, bringing people together like this. And for my co-panelists, Sister Valerie, Brother Byron, and Pastor White, I've grown, I've learned, I've shared with you from your wisdom, and we got to love Black people and bring us together.
Great being on the panel with everyone. Thank you for allowing me to be here amongst you greats.
I'm always appreciative for the consideration, and so thank you again.
My pleasure. And thank everybody who is viewing across all platforms, including YouTube events. Thank you so much. A grateful evening. Thanks so much.